Watch when Caitlin Clark is trying to create some space. It looked like she just got hit in the eye there.
Ooh, and Marina Mabrey. I missed that one, Idona.
That's a flagrant foul. It's a hard foul.
Golden going coast to coast. And we got another.
The Indiana Fever fans were chanting, Sophie, Sophie.
Picture this. A WNBA player goes from making $100,000 a year to potentially earning millions overnight. Not from a championship, not from an MVP award, but from one single moment of standing up for her teammate. This is the Sophie Cunningham story, and trust me, what's about to happen next is going to change everything. Before we dive into how Sophie Cunningham just became the most valuable enforcer in sports history, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because we're breaking down the most explosive WNBA stories as they happen, and you're not going to want to miss what's coming next. June 17th, 2025, Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Indiana Fever versus Connecticut Sun, which should have been just another regular season game, turned into the moment that changed Sophie Cunningham's life forever. With less than a minute left on the clock, Sophie did something that nobody saw coming. She didn't just defend Caitlin Clark, she sent a message that echoed through the entire sports world. And within 48 hours, everything changed. Sophie gained nearly 1 million followers. Her jersey sold out nationwide. Her endorsement rates jumped $20,000 per post. And sources are now saying she's fielding offers that could make her millions. But here's the crazy part. This wasn't some random act of aggression. This was calculated. This was strategic. And if you understand Sophie Cunningham's background, you'd know she's been preparing for this moment her entire life. Let's rewind for a second. Because to understand why Sophie Cunningham just became the most important player in the WNBA not named Caitlin Clark, you need to understand who she really is. Sophie isn't your typical basketball player. She's a farm-raised warrior who earned her black belt in Taekwondo at 6 years old. 6. Most kids are learning to tie their shoes. Sophie was learning how to take down opponents twice her size. Growing up on a farm in Missouri, Sophie and her sister Lindsay didn't play nice. They had bloody battles, real fights that would make most siblings cry for their parents. But not the Cunningham sisters. They were building something different. They were building toughness. The kind of toughness that would one day make Sophie the perfect protector for the most important player in women's basketball. Her high school career was legendary, not just for basketball, but for everything. When the football team needed a kicker, Sophie stepped up. When Missouri needed a lockdown defender, Sophie was there. She wasn't just an athlete. She was a competitor who refused to back down from anyone or anything. And that mentality followed her everywhere. Fast forward to the 2025 WNBA season. Sophie gets traded from Phoenix to Indiana in a massive 4-team deal. At the time, most people thought it was just another veteran addition to help mentor the young Fever squad. WNBA insiders joked that the Fever brought in Sophie to be Caitlin's enforcer. They had no idea how right they were. See, Sophie understood something that most players in the league refused to accept. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another rookie. She was the golden ticket, the player who could change everything for women's basketball. While other veterans were bitter about the attention Caitlin received, Sophie saw opportunity. She saw the future, and she positioned herself perfectly. The signs were there from day one. In interviews, Sophie was one of the few veterans who openly embraced what Caitlin brought to the league. When reporters asked about the rookie sensation, Sophie didn't give backhanded compliments or passive-aggressive responses. She celebrated her. She supported her. She made it clear that she understood the assignment, but understanding the assignment and executing it are two different things. For months, fans watched as Caitlin got hammered game after game. Cheap shots, hard fouls, eye pokes, body checks. And through it all, the refs did nothing. The league did nothing. Even Caitlin's own teammates seemed hesitant to step up. It was frustrating. It was maddening. And for Sophie, it was an opportunity waiting to happen. Which brings us back to that Tuesday night against Connecticut. The game itself was already chippy. Earlier in the third quarter, JC Sheldon had poked Caitlin in the eye during a play. Not accidentally, not as part of normal basketball contact, but a deliberate swipe across the face that left Caitlin clutching her eye in pain. The ref's response? A common foul. Nothing more. Then Marina Mabrey decided to pile on. As Caitlyn tried to recover from the eye poke, Mabrey body-checked her to the ground. Hard. The kind of hit that would get you ejected in any other professional sport. But in the WNBA, just another technical foul. No ejection, no real consequences. Just another night of Caitlyn Clark getting abused while the league looked the other way. The Fever were up big. The game was essentially over. Most players would have just let it go, moved on to the next game. But Sophie Cunningham isn't most players. With 46 seconds left, she made her move. As JC Sheldon drove to the basket, Sophie didn't just foul her. She demolished her, grabbed her mid-air, and threw her to the ground like a rag doll. And then the best part. When Sheldon got up and tried to confront her, Sophie stood her ground, pulled her hair, sent her flying into the courtside fans. It was brutal. It was violent, and it was exactly what Fever fans had been begging for all season long. Someone finally stood up for Caitlyn Clark. Someone finally sent the message that the cheap shots were over. The arena erupted. Fans started chanting Sophie's name over and over. Sophie, Sophie, Sophie. It was like watching a WWE crowd when their favorite wrestler finally gets revenge on the villain. Pure catharsis. Pure joy. After months of watching their superstar get brutalized with no protection, someone finally fought back. But here's where it gets really interesting. Sophie's actions weren't just about one game or one moment. They were about changing the entire narrative around Caitlyn Clark and the Indiana Fever. For over a year, teams had been taking liberties with Caitlyn. They knew the refs wouldn't protect her, they knew the league wouldn't step in, and they knew her teammates wouldn't retaliate. Sophie changed all of that in one violent, beautiful moment. The immediate aftermath was predictable. Sophie got ejected. So did Sheldon and Lindsay Allen from the Sun. The league handed out $400 fines like they were parking tickets. Chump change for professional athletes. But what happened next? That's where this story goes from interesting to absolutely insane. Within 24 hours, Sophie Cunningham became the most talked about player in the WNBA, not named Caitlyn Clark. Her social media exploded. We're talking 700,000 new TikTok followers in 48 hours, 244,000 new Instagram followers. Her total following went from under 500,000 to over 1.7 million practically overnight. To put that in perspective, there are WNBA All-Stars who have been playing for a decade who don't have half that following. MVP candidates who can't sniff those numbers. But Sophie? She gained more followers in 2 days than most players gain in their entire careers. And with those followers came something even more valuable: money. Here's what most people don't understand about social media influence in 2025. Follower count equals dollar signs. Before the incident, Sophie was charging around $10,000 for sponsored posts. Solid money for a role player in the WNBA. But after gaining nearly 1 million followers, industry experts say she can now command $30,000 per post. Maybe more. Think about that for a second. One Instagram post, $30,000. That's almost a third of her entire WNBA salary for typing a caption and posting a picture. And that's just the beginning. Because what Sophie did wasn't just gain followers, she gained the right followers. Caitlyn Clark's fan base. See, Caitlyn Clark fans aren't just numerous, they're rabid, they're loyal, and most importantly, they spend money. When they love a player, they don't just follow them on social media. They buy their jerseys, they purchase their merchandise, they support their sponsors. And now, they love Sophie Cunningham. Within hours of the game, Sophie's Indiana Fever jersey completely sold out. Gone. Can't buy it anywhere. The manufacturer literally cannot keep up with demand. For context, there are max contract players in the WNBA whose jerseys sit on shelves collecting dust. But Sophie, a role player, making $100,000 a year, sold out nationwide. But jerseys are just the tip of the iceberg. The real money is in endorsements. And according to sources close to the situation, Sophie's phone hasn't stopped ringing. Before the incident, she had deals with Adidas and Quest Nutrition, solid sponsors, but nothing groundbreaking. Now, Multiple companies are reportedly preparing offers that could push her endorsement income into 7 figures. Her agent, Addison Abdo from PRP, called it unprecedented growth, and he would know. His agency represents some of the biggest athletes in sports, but even he's never seen anything like this. The combination of timing, viral moment, and fan base adoption created the perfect storm for Sophie's marketability. Open Sponsorship, a platform that connects athletes with brands, estimates that Sophie's social media value increased by over $1 million from this incident alone. $1 million from one flagrant foul, from one moment of standing up for her teammate. That's not just unprecedented in the WNBA, that's unprecedented in sports, period. But here's the really fascinating part. Sophie didn't just stumble into this moment, she positioned herself for it. From the moment she was traded to Indiana, she understood the opportunity. While other players were complaining about Caitlin getting too much attention, Sophie was planning how to leverage it. In Phoenix, Sophie wasn't just a basketball player, she moonlighted as a TV analyst for the Suns. She understood media, she understood branding. She understood that in modern sports, your value isn't just about what you do on the court. It's about the story you tell, the narrative you create, the moments you manufacture. And let's be clear, this wasn't some lucky accident. Sophie's been preparing for this her whole life. That black belt training? It wasn't just about self-defense. It was about having the confidence to stand up when it matters. Growing up fighting her sister? It was about being comfortable with confrontation. Even filling in as her high school's kicker showed she was never afraid to step into unexpected roles. The financial implications go beyond just Sophie, too. This moment proved something that WNBA front offices need to understand. Playing with Caitlin Clark isn't just about basketball. It's about business. Kate Martin, a second-round pick who barely plays, sells more jerseys than the reigning MVP. Why? Because she was Caitlin's college teammate. Now, Sophie, a veteran role player, is about to make more in endorsements than most WNBA superstars. Why? Because she defended Caitlin. The message is clear. If you want to make real money in the WNBA, you don't necessarily need to be the best player. You need to be associated with Caitlin Clark. And more importantly, you need to be seen as someone who has her back. Sophie cracked the code, and now everyone else is trying to catch up. But this goes deeper than just money. This is about the future of the league. For years, the WNBA has struggled with the perception that players don't protect their stars, that there's too much jealousy and not enough unity. Sophie's actions challenged that narrative. She showed that at least some players understand that protecting the league's biggest star is good for everyone. The contrast with how other teams treat Caitlin is stark. Kennedy Carter hip-checking her, Dana Carrington celebrating cheap shots on social media, Angel Reese refusing to acknowledge her impact. These players chose to be villains in Caitlin's story. Sophie chose to be the hero, and heroes get paid. What's really interesting is the timing. Sophie is an unrestricted free agent after this season. She can sign with any team she wants. And after this incident, her market value just skyrocketed. Not just because of her basketball skills, but because of what she represents. She's the enforcer every team wishes they had, the veteran who understands the business, the player who gets it. Teams are going to look at what happened in Indiana and want their own version of Sophie Cunningham, someone who can play solid minutes, hit threes, and most importantly, create viral moments that translate to merchandise sales and social media engagement. In the modern WNBA, that's worth more than a double-double. But here's the thing about Sophie that makes her different from other enforcers in sports history. She's not a goon. She's not there just to fight. She can actually play. This season, she's averaging over 6 points per game, shooting nearly 40% from three, and providing veteran leadership. The enforcer role is just a bonus, a very lucrative bonus. The ripple effects of this moment are already being felt across the league. Other players are watching and learning. If you want to increase your profile, your following, and your earning potential, align yourself with Caitlin Clark. Protect her, support her, be seen as part of her team, not her opposition. It's already starting to happen. Teammates who were quiet before are now being more vocal in their support. Players who were neutral are picking sides, because Sophie showed them the blueprint. She showed them that there's real money in being Team Caitlin, real opportunity, real growth. For Caitlin herself, this moment was probably more valuable than any assist or three-pointer. Finally, after 2 seasons of taking abuse, someone had her back. Someone was willing to take a technical, take an ejection, take a fine to send a message. Don't mess with Caitlin Clark. Not anymore. Not on Sophie's watch. And that $400 fine Sophie received, reports say Caitlin paid it. A small gesture, but a meaningful one. It showed appreciation. It showed unity. It showed that this wasn't just about one player making a statement, but about teammates having each other's backs. The kind of chemistry championship teams are built on. The psychological impact on opponents can't be understated either. For over a year, teams knew they could rough up Caitlin without consequences. They could poke her eyes, shove her down, hip check her into oblivion, and the worst they'd face was a common foul. Sophie changed that calculus. Now they have to think twice. Is it worth it? Is messing with Caitlin worth potentially dealing with Sophie? It's the same dynamic that exists in hockey or baseball. You don't throw at the superstar because you know the enforcer is coming for you. Sophie brought that element to the WNBA. She made it clear that cheap shots on Caitlin would be met with retaliation. Real retaliation. Not just some pushing and shoving, but the kind of response that ends with you eating courtside popcorn. The business implications extend beyond just Sophie and Caitlin too. The Indiana Fever as a franchise just became must-see TV. They already had the most watched games because of Caitlin. Now, they have drama. They have storylines, they have a protector, and a superstar. That's a combination that sells tickets, drives ratings, and makes money. Think about the marketing possibilities. Sophie the enforcer, protecting Caitlin the superstar? It writes itself. T-shirts, promotional videos, social media campaigns. The Fever went from having one marketable star to having a dynamic duo. Batman and Robin. Jordan and Pippen, Caitlin and Sophie. Okay, maybe not quite that level, but you get the idea. For the WNBA itself, this moment represents both an opportunity and a challenge. The opportunity is clear. Drama sells. Storylines drive engagement. Having heroes and villains, protectors and aggressors creates the kind of narratives that turn casual viewers into devoted fans. Sophie gave them a gift-wrapped storyline that generated more buzz than most playoff games. The challenge is what to do about it. The league can't explicitly endorse violence. They can't come out and say, yeah, we love when players throw each other to the ground. But they also can't ignore that this moment generated more interest and engagement than anything else that happened that week. It's a delicate balance between maintaining professional standards and acknowledging what actually drives fan interest. What's particularly fascinating is how this plays into the larger narrative around women's sports. For years, critics have said the WNBA is too soft, not physical enough, lacking the edge that makes men's sports compelling. Sophie single-handedly destroyed that narrative. She showed that WNBA players can be just as fierce, just as protective, just as willing to throw down as anyone. But unlike random fights or cheap shots, Sophie's actions had purpose. They had meaning. She wasn't just being violent for the sake of it. She was protecting the face of the league, standing up for her teammate, fighting against the pattern of abuse that had been allowed to continue for far too long. That's not just physical, that's principled. The social media reaction tells the whole story. Within hours, Sophie went from being a player most casual fans couldn't identify to being the second most talked about player in the league. Clips of her takedown were everywhere. Memes were born. Fan accounts were created. She became a folk hero overnight. And it wasn't just Fever fans. Sports fans who had never watched a WNBA game were suddenly interested. Who is this Sophie Cunningham? Why did she do that? What's her story? The incident transcended basketball and became a cultural moment, the kind of thing that introduces new fans to the sport. The financial windfall from this extends beyond just direct endorsements too. Speaking engagements, appearance fees, podcast opportunities. Sophie went from being a role player to being a personality, someone with a story to tell, a brand to build, a message to share. That's worth money in today's media landscape. Consider this. Before the incident, how many national media outlets wanted to interview Sophie Cunningham? How many podcasts were begging for her appearance? How many brands saw her as a spokesperson? Now, everyone wants a piece of the enforcer. Everyone wants to hear from Caitlyn's bodyguard. It's already happening. In the days following the incident, Sophie did more media than she'd done in her entire career combined. Every show wanted her. Every reporter wanted quotes. Every platform wanted content. And in 2025, attention equals money. Every interview is an opportunity. Every appearance builds the brand. The timing couldn't be better for Sophie personally either. At 28 years old, she's in her prime. Old enough to be a veteran leader, but young enough to have several good years left. This incident didn't just make her money now, it set her up for the rest of her career and beyond. She'll be known as Caitlyn's enforcer forever. That's a brand that will last long after her playing days are over. But perhaps the most important aspect of all this is what it means for the future. Sophie didn't just change her own fortune, she created a template, a blueprint for how to leverage the Caitlyn Clark effect. Support her, protect her, align yourself with her, and reap the rewards. It's a simple formula that somehow took 2 years for someone to figure out. The question now is, who's next? Which player will be the next to realize that being Team Caitlyn is more valuable than being against her? Which veteran will see the opportunity Sophie saw? Which teammate will step up and claim their piece of the pie? Because make no mistake, the pie is massive and growing. Industry insiders are already predicting that Sophie's total earnings from this incident could exceed $2 million. When you factor in immediate endorsements, increased salary potential, and long-term brand value, $2 million from one flagrant foul, from one moment of having her teammates back. If that doesn't change how players think about their relationship with Caitlyn Clark, nothing will. The league itself needs to pay attention too. This incident proved that fans don't just want to see good basketball. They want stories. They want drama. They want to see teammates standing up for each other. They want to feel like the players care as much as they do. Sophie gave them all of that in one explosive moment. As we look ahead, the possibilities are endless. Sophie's already proven she understands media and branding from her time as a TV analyst. Now she has the platform to take it to another level. Her own show, definitely possible. Major national endorsement campaigns, already in the works. Becoming a household name? It's happening as we speak. The lesson for other players is clear. In the modern WNBA, your value isn't just about your stats. It's about your story, your brand, your moments. Sophie Cunningham took a calculated risk, and it paid off in ways nobody could have imagined. She went from role player to rock star in 46 seconds of game time. For Caitlyn Clark fans, Sophie is now royalty. She did what they've been begging someone to do for 2 years. She stood up to the bullies. She protected their hero. She showed that someone in that locker room actually gets it, actually understands what Caitlyn means to the league, and is willing to fight for her. The merchandise opportunities alone are staggering. Imagine the t-shirts. Sophie the Enforcer, Caitlyn's Bodyguard, Don't Touch 22. The creative possibilities are endless and lucrative. Fans are already making their own designs, creating their own content, spreading the legend of Sophie Cunningham far and wide. What's particularly brilliant about Sophie's approach is that she didn't overdo it. One moment, one statement, one unforgettable image of her standing over JC Sheldon after throwing her to the ground. She didn't need to fight every game or create constant drama. She picked her spot, made her statement, and let the moment speak for itself. The ripple effects continue to spread. Other teams are reportedly already discussing how to handle the fever differently. Do you still go after Caitlyn, knowing Sophie's there? Do you risk the retaliation? The enforcer effect is real, and it's already changing how opponents approach games against Indiana. For Sophie personally, this transformation from role player to celebrity is still sinking in. In interviews since the incident, she's been humble about the attention, but clearly understands the opportunity. She's leaning into the enforcer role while still maintaining that she's a basketball player first. It's a delicate balance, but she's handling it perfectly. The financial advisors and agents circling Sophie right now must be salivating. Here's a player who went from making $100,000 in salary to potentially earning millions in endorsements virtually overnight. The deals being discussed behind closed doors would make your head spin. Major brands want a piece of the Sophie Cunningham story. What makes this even more remarkable is that it happened in women's sports. The narrative has always been that female athletes can't generate the same buzz, the same viral moments, the same financial opportunities as their male counterparts. Sophie just proved that narrative wrong. She showed that with the right moment and the right approach, anything is possible. As we wrap up this incredible story, let's talk about what happens next, because this is just the beginning. Sophie's proven she can create moments. She's proven she can capture attention. She's proven she can monetize that attention. Now the question is, how far can she take it? How big can the Sophie Cunningham brand become? The smart money says very big. She has everything brands want in 2025. Authenticity. Sophie's real toughness isn't manufactured. Narrative. The enforcer story writes itself. Association. Being linked with Caitlin Clark is marketing gold. Personality. She's proven she can handle media and connect with fans. This combination is marketing dynamite. For the Indiana Fever, having Sophie on the roster just became even more valuable. She's not just a player anymore. She's an attraction, a draw, someone fans come to see beyond just Caitlin. That's the kind of depth that builds sustainable success, the kind of supporting cast that turns a one-star show into a true contender. The most beautiful part of this entire story, it all started with loyalty, with having a teammate's back, with standing up for what's right even when it costs you. Sophie Cunningham didn't become a millionaire by chasing stats or personal glory. She did it by being a great teammate, by protecting her superstar, by understanding that sometimes the most valuable play isn't on the stat sheet. As this story continues to unfold, one thing is crystal clear. Sophie Cunningham just changed the game. Not just for herself, but for every player in the WNBA. She showed them a new path to relevance, popularity, and financial success. She proved that in the age of social media and viral moments, one flagrant foul can be worth more than 1,000 made baskets. The enforcer era in the WNBA has officially begun. Sophie Cunningham isn't just Caitlin Clark's bodyguard, she's a pioneer, a trailblazer, a millionaire in the making. And this is just the beginning. The next chapter of this story is going to be even more incredible. Book it. What do you think about Sophie's rise to fame? Drop a comment below and let me know if you think she made the right move. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that subscribe button, because we're covering all the biggest WNBA stories as they happen. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next in this incredible season.